All right, Wednesday. The first thing I want to do is just say thanks for being here, man. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Glad to be here.
This is
Whoa,
going to be,
whoa, this thing
whoa.
does stuff. I do this podcast every week with my buddy Jason, and with my hand gestures, I'm learning that there's a code to this. So there's this
I,
one. I got this guy, got thumbs up, and
mhm.
that'll well, maybe not. Yeah, sometimes I don't know. The two thumbs up, is it two thumbs? There we are. There we are.
Oh, wow.
So there's I'm learning the ways of the force.
Well, you're kind of teaching me too then, because I had no idea. I thought I
Yeah,
did something. I like looked around like,
it's all accidental. For the months, we had no idea what was happening.
well, let's jump in to talk about the big news here, the newest stuff going on, and that's that you just wrapped recording a new album.
That is correct. I did. I finished up this summer, and now it's the sit around and stare at my watch and go, man, I wish it would go faster. So that's the problem with every record and every movie, and it's done a year before the public gets it. And when you
Hmm.
create something that you're really proud of and you really like, it makes it even harder to wait. And that's where I am right now. I'm literally just going, come on, come on.
Well, I got to say, obviously, I haven't heard any of it or anything like that yet, but I love the current lineup of musicians that you're playing with, and Mike on drums is just such an asset. And what could we like expect out of this upcoming record if you had to relate it to something that you've already done?
Um, well, for me, the this record, I really had to go back to what I did in the very beginning. This is the first recording I've done since 2009 without Rahman in the studio. I realized that the other day. Like, he's been recording with me since the Gunfire '76, which was in 2009, and then Murderdolls happened, and then he was in Wednesday 13 after that, and he became my guitar guy. I sort of quit playing guitar and let him be the guitar player for me. So
Mm-hmm.
when that wasn't there, I had to go back to what I did in the beginning. So it was a challenge in my mind, just because I have to make everything a war in my brain, even though it's not. I just had to go back and be like, hey, I got to go back and do this again. And it was the whole question: are you good enough to do this? Can you do this? And I've just got this, this fight in my head, and then it became a yes, I can do this, I can do this. And so it just became this really fun process, something I was kind of nervous about doing again and going back to doing what I've done in the beginning, but it turned out to be one of my favorite recording sessions of my career. I had such a good time. I We spent more time on the record than I thought, and that's okay. Because I was having so much fun with it. I'm like, oh well, maybe let's take another couple days. Oh well, maybe we'll add another week here, and I had a good time. I don't think I've had this much fun recording an album since the last Murderdolls in 2010, and then before that, probably my first album, my first couple records. Those were just a lot of fun. So to answer your question, which I really steered off course of, I would say this album sounds to me like the first few Wednesday 13 records. And it's in that vibe instantly. I think when I play guitar and write, it just kind of goes back to that style.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't really, with this album, I kind of over the last several records, maybe not the last record, but definitely Necrophase and Condolences was in the album before Monsters. That was we were experimenting and doing some different things and experimenting with heavier sounds,
Hmm.
and I kind of just reached my limit with that, and for this I just went back to what kind of made this happen in the first place. And once I got it going again, it was just natural. Just started kind of it just started working for itself. So I had a great time recording it. Again, it's just the waiting process.
So when you're, writing and recording and stuff like that, because you've been doing this for a long time, are your musical inspirations still the same as they were when you first started out, or are you in a completely different place when you're drawing inspiration from other people?
I've always kind of wore my influences on my sleeves. I've always
Mm,
talked about the bands I like, and when I before I started writing for this album, I keep referring back to this moment. I can kind of remember this moment in my head. I remember being on our tour bus in
mm,
the last U.S. tour, and we were just about to get dressed for the show, and our bassist Troy and I were sitting up front, and he and I are we kind of get dressed around the same time, and I'm always putting on music, and he and I pretty much agree on the same music at all times. I'm always playing Kiss
mm,
or Wasp, and then for he's a Texas guy, so I'll flavor it with some Dangerous Toys
yeah,
in there. But either way, we're just always listening to music and getting our getting ready for the show.
yeah.
And remember, he asked me, he's like, so what are we gonna what are you thinking for the next record? What direction are we going? What are we doing on the next one?
Mm,
And I looked at him, and I can't remember what band was on. It could have been Wasp. It could have been it was one of those bands, on my playlist. And I just said, I want to make a record that sounds like the stuff that you and I play every day before we get ready. This is the same
mm,
bands. I keep listening to the same stuff all these years, and that's what I want to make. And that's what I kind of went in with. And I've always got my influences in my head. There's
mm,
I think I made a post on Instagram about all the bands that we name checked in the studio. And our producer Alex, he kept. I guess he was the one that could pick it off. He said, "Oh, well, that kind of sounds like Kiss, or that's got a Cheap Trick thing, or oh, you did this, or blah blah blah." And it was just he was reminding me of it. So yeah, definitely the influences were coming in, but it's all the same stuff. There's nothing new that came in. There's no
mm.
new band or no new tuning or anything. It's just, I guess, what we do now is it's classic rock. I guess I don't know, but to me, that's what rock and roll's always been, and it's really when I look around, it's not out there as much anymore. I mean, the older
Yeah,
bands are still doing it, but
yeah.
as far as like rock and roll is it's like always, when Murderdolls first came out, it was dead.
Hmm, hmm.
There was what Buck Cherry had just came out a couple years before, and wasn't a whole lot. And so rock and roll has been this little cockroach, just sort of weaving in and out of it. And I'm kind of glad to be one of those bands. I never set out to do anything that was mainstream or to be on the radio. It was just to create a fan base that could to keep me busy and keep me touring around the world, and I've been able to do that for over 20 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of like that your influences are still the same because it's I could relate to that as the bands I grew up listening to are the bands that I listen to now. And I think enough people don't stick with that because they feel like they have to adapt and change. But if it's working for you, it's working for you. And to me personally, I've been coming to see you for so long. Your voice is just getting better, and you've been like doing this for so long, and it's just like how do you maintain that and continue to grow because it's unique and it's really just it's more powerful than ever.
I don't know. I I asked myself the same question, and I think mainly it's probably I've sort of learned how to control it,
Mm,
and I know when not to push it. I used to be the guy, back in the Murdered All days of both albums, even up until I don't know exactly, but I just started learning how to control my voice a little better, and I used to blow it out, and
mm,
after one show and then I would spend a week trying to slowly it coming back,
mm-hmm,
and luckily it's been okay. I don't practice. I was telling the guys, I was like, I really should practice. Like I got stuff set up here in my new office space here that I can actually practice, and I'm going to do that as it gets closer to the tour. Just because I never really practice.
mm-hmm.
It's and I should, and I'm really lucky that it works. But I kind of just get out on tour and just hope it hope it works. And
Yeah.
it's been working for all these years. And I don't know. I think what I did a long time ago. I think I hurt my voice a long time ago, and somehow hurting it, I was able to develop this lower range. So now I still
Mm,
have my high range I had back in the day, but I've got this really low range now that I don't know. I'm able to understand how to maybe, like, I think more or less I know now not how not to hurt my voice. And I just
mhm.
keep my fingers crossed and hope it works. And every day I wake up, I can't tell you, every day I wake up on tour, and it'll be right before you wake up and you're just laying in your bunk, and I'll go, I'm like, it's there. Because I can tell when it's not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's terrifying. When I watched that Bon Jovi documentary, it was like
Hmm.
watching him go through that vocal stuff. I've been there with days hurting my throat, not what he's going
Hmm.
through per se, but like the little methods of just it can drive you insane. And I was literally watching that. I was getting a little anxiety watching it.
I know, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, staying on one of the things that you just said was that a lot of bands aren't doing that classic rock sound anymore, but those bands still are. But I think now we're getting into an era where those bands are even starting to drop off, and you're going to start hearing about retirements of some of these bands, and it's kind of scary because that'll be a lost art form. The big stage shows and the cool guitar riffs and like I feel like once bands like that are gone, nobody's going to really understand what we all came to love about music.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're getting older. I mean, I just turned 48 this year, so
Oh wow.
so when you put that in perspective and go, okay, well now the bands I looked up to, and I just watched that Nothing But a Good Time
Mm,
documentary, which I loved, and just watching all the eras of those bands, and I grew up watching those bands, and really the second and third era of those hair bands that came through were what really created what I do, and I
mm,
think I'm still carrying that on, but I don't hear that a lot anymore. And like you said, with these bands that are those bands that I listened to growing up,
mm,
of course I'm getting older, they're getting older, so how much longer are they going to keep going? So when they're done, who's left? But again, I'm noticing, what is old is becoming new again. Like
yes.
I still think there's hope for punk rock. I think there will be a resurgence in punk rock again. People will realize how much fun and how simple it is,
Yeah.
and it'll come back around. Like I'm already seeing like maybe just on my radar, but there's this band called maybe I'm pronouncing it right or wrong. Amel and the Sniffers is this
Mm,
band out of Australia, which is it's great, but it's not the new, and it's amazing. It's just fun punk rock. It reminds me of they got a female front lady, and she's got this Debbie Harry meets Wendy O. Just
mm,
fun vibe. It's simple, and so when I see stuff like that, it makes me smile and think that that you know there's hope. I don't see
mm.
bands like I guess there is it just been Dirty Honey or something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a
Yes.
newer band I see.
Hmm.
I checked out one of their videos because someone was like, "Oh, they're a rock band," and I checked them out, and it's okay, but again, it's just I don't know. I'm still looking for someone to come through like the Dead Boys or something that's just gonna shake the scene up again. It'll be more
Hmm.
familiar to what I grew up in. But if it
Yeah.
doesn't happen, I got those memories, and I'm able to do that myself and create the music that I want to hear, whether it's out there anymore. And I don't
Hmm.
necessarily do that per se, that kind of music. 'Cause my lyrically, I'm not an '80s guy. Musically, I get riffs and ideas like that. I think it's a
Hmm.
little heavier,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I always set out to do. I loved all that the hair metal glam music, but I'm like, if I was ever to do that one day, I'd want my lyrics to be the exact opposite. Instead of
Mm,
singing about girls, I'm going to sing about burying them or digging them up, and just make it catchy but offensive at the same time. And I want the music to be I don't want it to be too nice where it's just, make it a little sleazy, make it a little
Hmm.
meaner. So it was always just kind of treating what I always wanted out of that era. And there were bands that I liked. I always liked the darker, sleazier bands and the louder bands. Like I always mentioned Spread Eagle and the Throbs and bands like that I liked. And because they had a little tougher edge to them. And then when I started doing my own thing, I'm like, well, if I can toughen that up a little bit as I'm
Hmm.
wearing a dress and a wig doing this stuff. You know, we were mean. We were mean drag queens. That was our thing. My twisted sister.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, you just brought up the Nothing But a Good Time documentary, which I was going to ask you about anyways, but it's a good segue as well because not only, I was going to ask, was it your plan to always, have the type of horror rock lyrics and things like that that you do, but with your influences in glam rock, it's kind of cool that I saw that you have a guest vocalist from that generation on your upcoming album. Is it okay to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tammy Down from Faster
hmm
Pussycat is doing a song with you on your upcoming record. So how did that come about?
Um, I've developed a friendship with Tammy and Faster Pussycat, probably since I've been living here in Los Angeles now, which has been almost 15 years. I met Tammy years and years ago, and then through Ace Von Johnson when he was still in the band.
Mm,
When I first was out here, I did some just was always around. They were always around when we
mm,
when we hung out. So just became friends, and we did a show together at Rock and Shock in Connecticut. And either way, flash forward, we're recording here a couple months ago, and we're working on a song. And in the studio, like we're just talking right now, the influences we're talking. Oh, mentioning this band, and then I've got
mm,
Alex producing the record, who was in Life, Sex, Death, and who's got a history with Enough's Enough, and he was, I didn't even know. I'm hearing stories. Oh, he had a band with the guy from Saigon Kick, which I didn't even know about. I'm just, you know what I mean. So just all these names are coming up. We're working on this song. Uh, Alex doesn't know my whole musical history and where I
mm.
come from or what made me want to do this, and he didn't know that Faster Pussycat was a band that I credit to me learning how to play guitar.
Oh, okay.
I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it's a good story and it leads up. And I told Tammy this story, and but basically, Faster Pussycat. I bought the cassette. I remember buying that and L.A. Guns on cassette. Same day, they sort of went together. They were like peanut butter and jelly. Those bands for me back then, and your only way to get music was through Hit Parade or Circus, Metal Edge, or any other magazine you could find. There was a lot of them then, but you were constantly looking for pictures, posters to hang on your wall, like I still do. And the bands that I always liked, unfortunately, were the ones that didn't have the pictures on the walls. Story of my life. I'm the same guy. I'm the guy in the little print. I don't get the big poster, but when I do, it makes somebody happy. One person somewhere is happy in a bedroom like this.
Mhm,
So me and my buddy we're at the music store and we're looking around and for a new band or something, and we look over in the musical section and they have these books called tablature books, which I didn't know what the hell a tablature book was then, but I just knew they were music. When you open them up, it was music notes. I didn't know how to read
mm.
that shit, but they had a Faster Pussycat first album book, and they had a Skid Row, and they had a Motley Crue, and a couple other bands. But the Faster Pussycat had a fold out poster of them, and it was like, oh man, they look so cool. And my buddy was like, I want to get it. And it was like $40 or $50 to buy this thing, which was expensive for a kid back then. So, but my buddy, he had some extra lunch money, so he buys the thing, tears the poster out of it, hangs on his wall. The book's just sitting there, and I'm just kind of looking through it. We don't know what to do with it, and he's like, "Take that home or whatever," and I don't want it. So I take it home. It sits in my house, and a friend of mine, we're talking on the phone. He starts telling me about tablature, and I'm like, "Oh, I think that's what this book is." And he's like, "Well, get the book out, and I'll tell you how to read this." And he's like, the numbers are on the book is where you put your fingers. So I grab my guitar and I'm like, okay, and off I go. and I started learning by ear. I knew how to
Hmm.
tune my guitar. I learned by ear how to play that first album. Well, by tuning, just kind of playing
Yeah.
along to it, and reading the tablature. And I learned that whole first album, how to play every single song on it. And then I started learning the solos,
Hmm.
which I wasn't the greatest on because I couldn't really understand it exactly, but I knew enough to get it. And that was my that was my guitar lesson, was that record. So when I'm telling Alex the story, we're recording the record, and I'm telling the song, like, oh, I was like, this has kind of got a faster Pussycat vibe to it, and blah blah
Hmm.
blah. And I was like, I should call up Tammy and have him come sing on this. And that became the
Oh.
talk for 2 weeks. And literally, it kept us saying it, or me saying it out loud 5 or 6 times. And I got sick of hearing myself say it.
Hmm.
And I just got that text confidence and went, I'm going to ask him. And he, without hesitating, said, I would love to sing on the record. Just tell me where and when. And it was that simple. And he
Wow.
showed up to the studio, and he brought Sam Bam and Slim Tender with him as well, and Tammy did the lead vocals on the second verse of the song, and did the chorus, and did the outro thing with me, and then Sam and him did they did the background vocals on it. So it was cool. So I got Tammy to do that. I got half the band to sing on it, and so we were sort of in a band for the afternoon, and I got to live out my little teenage dream of
Hmm.
playing with one of my musical heroes. And I've told Tammy, I'm like, this whole look, this whole thing, I saw Tammy when they opened for Kiss on the Revenge tour, and Tammy had just dyed his hair black. He went from blonde to black. And he literally went from looking like the blonde dude that we all seen in that first album to this.
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
what I saw him looking like in 1991.
Hmm.
You can look up pictures of it. He's got a
Yeah.
top hat on. He's got big glasses on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I blame him.
I love
So,
that. I
so
mean,
it,
that's
it
awesome.
makes sense for me. I always mention Alice Cooper. I always
Hmm.
mention those bands that influenced me, and they did absolutely. But I really got to hand off the look to Tammy.
Hmm.
And then when I saw Marilyn Manson, and when the world saw Marilyn Manson, everyone was like, "Oh, he must be Marilyn Manson." I'm like, "No, it's Tammy Down." What? What's a Tammy Down? And then it's so it's so yeah, but that's where it all comes from,
Wow.
and I'm still rocking that look that I started. I dyed my hair black when I was 15 because that was around the time when I saw him dye his hair, and I had bleach blonde hair, and I went,
Oh, wow.
"Ooh, I'll make that change." So I made that change at 15, and here I am at 48, and not much has changed.
That's awesome, man. And the cool thing about like that whole scene too is like when I'm out on the road with Vixen and whatever, and we just did the Monsters on the Mountain and all that stuff. Faster Pussycat plays, and all these people are playing. And I got one of my Wednesday 13 shirts, and it's all cut up, and I do like cool shit with it. And the amount of people that are like, "Oh, Wednesday 13, that's awesome," and like it just reminds you that it's such like a small world and like small community where it's like you are all tied together, because the like
Yes.
like I said, everybody's always just like, "Oh, that's cool, Wednesday 13, that's great." Like it's always the first words as soon as I put it on.
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people listen with their eyes.
Mhm.
And I know when you see me, I don't just scream out 80s glam hair metal. But in my mind, I see Tammy Down, and that does scream 80s hair metal to me. So it just depends on what you see. So when I say, oh, the hair metal influenced me, when I just explained
Mhm.
my Tammy story and how I got this look and the whole thing, that's where that comes from.
Mhm.
But now I've been doing Jason's show every week. People kind of hear where I come from, and I think they get scared of the imagery. And then I think some of my last couple records, they've definitely been in the heavier realm, so some people don't know where to look when I've got such a long history of records, and
Mm.
sometimes people didn't really get the Murderdolls. They didn't see that that had the '80s hair metal influence as much as it did. They got scared with the dreadlocks and the no eyebrows. They went, "Oh, they're this." I'm like, "No, we're a little more rock and roll than what you give us credit for." So,
Yeah.
and I'm guilty of listening with my eyes too. Back in the day, I'd listen to
Yeah.
bands, and so that's just the thing that happened. So I just that's my goal next year. I think is just to just get out there a little more, and spread the word on what I do, and let people know that maybe they got the wrong idea of what I do. And
Yeah.
I'm out trying to get the person that doesn't know who we are into us more than than just I know our fans are going to be there, but I'm looking for that person in the back that's got their arms crossed going, impress me,
Yeah. Yep.
knock their
Yep.
arms down and go, hey, check this out.
The last time I was wearing your shirt when we were out on the road, it was Jason that came up to me and was like, he's on my show now. And I was like, no, I know, I watch it.
Yeah, Jason
um,
is another guy too. We both kind of live this simultaneously growing up. He's in New York, I'm in North Carolina, and we're growing up the same thing, watching movies and TV
mhm.
shows and the same bands, just crazy. And meeting him, I go, wow, this is all right.
Well, honestly, the first time, so you're not going to remember this, but I opened up for you a couple times
Mhm.
years ago,
Okay.
like forever. It was when Skeletons came out,
Okay. Was a
and
long time ago. Yeah.
that's when I was starting to realize the influences that you had were mine. Because we had a conversation at one of the shows because I was wearing Kiss gloves.
Hmm.
And you immediately were like, "Oh, Kiss, that's awesome!" And we just started talking music. And then fast forward how many years later, and I was hanging out with you guys because I got really tight with Jack and Troy.
Hmm.
And same thing, we started talking about White Lion and like all these, and it was just like one of those eye-opening moments. But looking back, it shouldn't have shocked me because in the height of my I love glam rock, I was also in love with the Murderdolls. So it's like
Right.
that makes perfect sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that was crazy too, because I wasn't expecting when I, heard that a guy from Slipknot wanted to check me out for a band.
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting this guy to be into to some of the stuff. And Joey was definitely he was into a lot of stuff, but he didn't like a lot of stuff too. Like he was,
Mhm.
for me, like, I could listen to Enough's Enough and I could listen to White Lion, but he'd be like, fuck them. But yeah, but he'd be like, I love the Zeros, and I love. He would listen to that. But there was certain bands like he hated ballads, and so I think anybody that was known for a ballad, whether they were good or not, he just already had his mind made up. So Enough's Enough and White Line didn't have a chance. And I'm like, but
That's great. That's great. So I got to ask you though, and I know you've been asked this a million times, and I've probably even heard this answer before, and I just can't remember it at the moment. But what came first for you? Was it the horror or was it the rock and roll?
um, probably. Um, well, definitely movies and horror movies were in front of me just pretty much 24/7, just because
Hmm.
my upbringing, I say it like up till I was probably, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. I lived in a little 3 bedroom trailer with my mom and dad, brother and sister. And I didn't have a bedroom, so my I hung out on the couch, and we had an illegal cable hookup. So parents went to sleep. I'm watching HBO and Cinemax, watching everything I shouldn't be watching, and just soaking all that in. But uh, I wasn't really into music. I like the soundtracks. There were certain movies that moved me, and I like even the John Carpenter stuff still to this day. Like it moved me then, it moves me now. I remember hearing this Assault on Precinct 13, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's cool. That's cool sound." So soundtrack stuff always excited me, and I liked certain songs when I'd see when they would use it in a montage to pep somebody up, like Rocky, like on Rocky 4 when "Hearts on Fire" song, you're like, yes, I want to chop a tree down now or something. So I would look for songs that move me like that. But then I think whenever the heavy metal horror switch over in the mid '80s when Dawkins doing Dream Warriors and Trick or Treat movie and Gene Simmons, and rock and roll just kind of became Alice Cooper coming back.
Yeah.
Everything just sort of. it took my eyes in that direction a little bit, and I'm like, oh, well, I can see this, So, but as far as like the horror direction with my music, I don't think that was ever in my intention. My intention was to learn how to play guitar. I wasn't even going to be the vocalist. I was going to be the lead guitar player in a
Mm,
band. Didn't even know what kind of music it would, or I knew the music maybe, but maybe not the what I would sing about. And then whenever I was in a band for a couple of years searching for a vocalist, and then I became the vocalist, and I had to
yeah.
start writing words. I went, well, what are you going to sing about? I'm like, well, what do I know about? And I look around my room, and I'm like, oh, okay. I can sing about that. I can sing about that, and then there it goes, and then that's when the horror imagery comes in, and then where or the lyrics come in, and then when it's like, oh well, what if you got to make a flyer for your show? What did you want your logo to look like?
Mm,
Oh, I like the way that Dawn of the Dead poster looks. Let me take that, and it
mhm,
just became like literally looking around in my what was around me at the time, and
mhm,
I just kind of did what I knew and what was easy for me. So I sang about movies, and I found a picture I just sent to Stevie from Tough the other. We were talking about the Nothing But a Good Time documentary, and I wrote him
mhm.
and just said I thought it was awesome that Tough got a great feature in it, and I sent him a picture of me that I found me wearing my Tough T-shirt. Christmas morning, I just got a bass because I was trying guitar. Then the next year, I tried bass because I sucked at guitar. I'm like, well, this has only got four strings. Maybe I was suck. I could do this. And then but either way, there's a photo I found of me, and in the background, you can see my walls just covered in pictures. And in the center of the room is the giant Tough poster,
Mm.
and above it's a Poison poster, and right in the middle of it is a poster of the Toxic Avenger,
Oh, that's great.
and then a Kiss Alive 2,
Uh-huh.
and then another monster movie poster. And I'm just like, it was always wedged in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it just,
Yeah.
so it may not make sense for someone to see Poison and then see the Toxic Avenger. In my world, it did. And
Yeah.
then when you put a song together, you go, oh, that's kind of what I do. I do kind of sound like Poison with the Toxic Avenger on it a little bit.
I love that. I love that. And it's funny that you say it in other people's worlds that doesn't make sense because in my world that makes perfect sense because I did the same thing. Just
Why
horror
and why
movie.
not? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. It does. When you hear it, it does make sense, and that's
Right.
where I get it. And that's where I get it from. It's okay to have a little bit of mix the two genres, and I've
Mhm.
always done that. And I think when I mentioned that, like we did the Glam Fest thing in Australia a couple years ago, and
Yeah.
I did that strictly because Faster Pussycat was on it,
Hmm.
and I, again, wanted to tour with them.
Hmm.
Enough Enough was on it. I'm like, this will be great. And a lot of my fans that I know there and I talk to every time I come through, they're just like, why are you on this? And I'm like, don't you get it? Don't
Yeah.
you don't you hear this? And they're like, no, I don't. And I'm like,
Oh.
what? And like,
See.
and not they're being rude about it or
Yeah.
anything, but
Yeah.
like we just had like a funny argument. And they're like,
Yeah.
I don't see Faster Pussycat and hear and see you. I'm like, but, and I guess it just depends on what a lot of people see with their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I fall
You
into
know,
that niche category that's
see
like,
with their eyes. What did I
yes.
just say? I just said stupid. People see people. They want to see something and they can't hear what it is. Like that is the ingredients of it. But
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's so weird. But I guess it's just how I grew up.
I love that though. Like I like I said, I fall into that niche category that gets it. So when I see you doing like a show at the Rainbow with all the hair metal bands, or like that Australia tour, I was like, this is amazing. I
Yeah.
love seeing that stuff. So I guess we talked about the music and influences in that, and it's funny because now even behind you, I see Kiss and Michael Myers right now.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but you also grew up in Flair country, so you
Hmm.
had to be a wrestling fan.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely was in the heart. It seemed like wrestling and NASCAR were sort of the just as common as anything there. It
Mhm,
was just constantly growing, and the NASCAR thing got bigger, but wrestling always seemed to be big. It was
mhm,
always been big, and then I remember the early stuff, like some of my early memories going to my grandfather's house. He was watching the old Ric Flair. I'm not sure what the division was called, the East Coast division with Jim Crockett.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
I remember him watching that, and my grandfather hated Ric Flair because he was the bad guy. That's what he wanted you to do.
yeah.
But he would like react and like try to get out of his recliner, like to kick his ass, you know, like And I was just like, why is he so mad at that guy?
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
then
great.
as I got older, I'm like, oh, I like him. That's what a heel is. And
Hmm.
so yeah, and I think like in Charlotte in that area, I think was it like Ricky Steamboat like from there, and like it was the
Yeah.
same. Like I remember going to Big Lots one Christmas, and then the Koloffs were there signing.
Oh,
Like in
that's
Big Lots. I'm just like
that's
so.
great.
And then you'd go to Kmart and there'd be NASCAR people there signing. So it was just a pretty much a common thing. But I grew up with that,
Hmm.
and I really didn't care for NASCAR because it just, again, I was a punk. I was trying to rebel against anything. People liked something, I hated it.
Yeah.
But luckily, I didn't hate wrestling because it was too cool to like. And I grew up during a good time to like wrestling. I remember that's when all the cartoons were coming out, and it was just everywhere. Toys galore, the thumb wrestlers.
Yep, yep. You
Yeah.
know, it's a quick story for you that relates to wrestling and your music is when I first broke into the business and started wrestling, and people would, what do you want your entrance music? What's your entrance music? It was actually Bad Things.
Oh,
So I used to actually enter to the ring with your song. And
nice.
this is before I knew that you were even a wrestling fan or anything. So of course, after I
Correct.
found out, I was like, "Oh, that just worked out
The
great."
perfect entrance song.
Yeah, I mean, they flipped me heel, and I was like, "I got it."
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That song is again, that's another one of my simple ideas that just has lasted for me. And when I play it, people, that's my Rock You Like a Hurricane.
Yeah,
It's just got the same structure.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
just just meaner lyrics.
I love that. So, in sticking with the themes that we've been talking about here, you actually find your way into doing these Comic Cons, horror conventions, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How did that come about? That's got to be like really cool for you because of everything that you're into. That just kind of encompasses all of it.
I'm so lucky to able to do that, and I owe that all to my buddy Eben, who runs the Famous Monsters convention, which I just did. He and Corey Taylor bought the Famous Monsters brand, and
Mm.
but before that, my friend Eben was working with Mad Monster convention, and I didn't even know what this was. But I think I was going home to visit North Carolina, and I saw that they were advertising a horror convention, and I'm like, why is there a horror convention happening in North Carolina? Okay. And then I'm like, that's a killer lineup. Okay,
Yeah.
number two question. Why am I not on this? I better get on this. And I can't remember who called or whatever, but I got on the thing, and my manager got me on it, and then I became friends with Eben, and ever since then he's got me on to these conventions. I did a couple other ones throughout the world, and I did like a Comic-Con in England. I was totally forgot about till the other day. I was thinking about it. But these things have been great for me because it literally ties in everything that I'm about. Like, and again, what I said earlier, I'm always looking for that person in the back of the crowd that doesn't know who we are to get their
Hmm.
attention. And that place is filled full of people that have no idea who I am,
Hmm.
that would love something that I've done,
Hmm.
and my history of stuff. So these conventions are a great way to meet my fans. It's a great way to meet a stranger that's walking by. Like, I can see people walking by with a White Zombie T-shirt,
Hmm.
and I'll see them all the weekend. I'll see them on Friday. They'll come by and stare at me a couple times. They'll check me out, like, who's that guy? And I'm like, I'm your favorite band, and you don't even know it. And then they'll come over to me by Saturday because it's a 3-day convention, and then I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you should check it out." And then Saturday night they'll listen to it, and then Sunday they'll come and buy all my stuff because they listen to the music all night. So it's almost
Hmm.
it's a work. It's a lot of working and shaking hands and meeting people, but
Yeah.
it's a very rewarding thing to have someone that I saw on a Friday kind of not give me the time of day, and then by Sunday they're telling me I'm their favorite new band. that's
Oh, I
a
love that.
that's rewarding to do, and I'm willing to put into that work, and that's why I like doing these conventions because they're
Hmm.
so much fun, and I'm planning to do that big time for next year. So in between my tours, if I'm not on tour and I got a month off, I'm going to be doing a horror convention here or there. And that's
Mm.
how I want to promote the record. That's how I want to promote the band because I feel like that's my audience. And I've been doing this for so long. When I first started doing this, horror was not mainstream. And then Walking
Hmm.
Dead came out, and now everything,
Yeah.
everything. There's a Wednesday show,
Yeah.
and I'm still this kind of undiscovered thing that's been around for a long time. So I still got the drive in me to go out and try to achieve more and want to do more. I'm never happy with I'm happy with what I've got, but I always want a little more. And I
Hmm.
think that's what keeps me driving and doing this. I got a new record that I'm crazy happy about, and that's another thing too I was trying to explain to someone. I told you how when I told Troy how the kind of music I wanted to write.
Hmm.
And I told Alex, our producer guy, I was like, when I'm sitting at these conventions and someone comes up to me and they're talking to me about music and I'm trying to explain to them who I am. That's a kind of a big question. Like, who are you? What do you do? Well, and I explain to them, and then they go, well, what's your best record? If I was going to listen to your
Mm.
album, where do I start? And usually, most of the time, I always go my first album. I
Okay, so
always
you
I
go.
always go my first album, like my first, because that's the one that I think has I captured some lightning in a bottle on that one a little bit. I got a lot of I think the best of what I do. There's songs
Mm.
of every style of what I like to do, and but I don't have that record always on me,
Mm.
and that's a
Okay.
record that's 20 years old. And I'm like, I want to have a brand new record that I just recorded, and I want to be that proud of it. When someone goes, well, where do I start? And I'll go, this brand new one. This is the one to start with. And if you
Hmm.
like that, you're going to love this one and you're going to love that one. So that was another thing too with this new album. I wanted it to be something that I'd be as and not lie about it. I go,
Hmm.
where do I start? Start with this new one.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, and
And I haven't been
especially.
able to say that. And not that I don't like my other records or anything. It's just, it's just like I'm sure anyone that's made movies and you got to keep making stuff over the years, someone's going to go, well, what's better, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 10 or Part 1? Well, probably Part 1.
Right.
3 and
Right.
4 was good. 6 was okay, but I want to make one that so I made one that I feel, and again, I didn't try to imitate that record
Hmm.
or try to do exactly what I did with that, but there's things that reminded me of it. The way I felt about recording it, I felt good about it.
Hmm.
And when I went back and listened to it, and it's not even mixed yet, I've just got the rough mix of what it is, but I can hear the end process,
Hmm.
and I instantly I think fans are going to love it. I feel like these songs, there isn't a bad song, and that's another problem I had. I
Hmm.
like, what's going to be the single? How
Mm.
do you list these songs? So I've been playing DJ and making a track listing in my head for the last 3 months and redoing it every day and just driving myself crazy. And that's what happens when you got a long time to wait for these albums to come out. So right now, I think I have it figured out, but once I get a mix back, I want to probably change everything again, and so at least I got time.
Well, I think I speak for all the Wednesday 13 fans out there that are just super excited, and we can't wait to hear it either. And this isn't just like a guy interviewing you, blowing smoke up your ass. I'm like a longtime fan from when I was in high school to now, and just seeing the progression of music and everything. I always get very excited when I see that you're coming out with something
Thank you.
new. I get
Thank you.
so I know we can't like keep you here all day, so I'm gonna kind of try and blow through this next thing here, and then
Yeah.
we'll get you going. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what we like to do, that we do with everybody that comes on for the first time, is we usually do like a lightning round, where it's just like a this or that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But for you, I changed it, and it's going to be horror movies and glam rock bands, and it's just going to
All
be a
right.
quick this or that.
Okay. All right. I can
All
do that.
right. So first lightning round question. Are we going with the original Halloween or the original Friday the 13th?
Halloween.
Sleepaway Camp or Creep Show?
Creep Show.
The Fog or Poltergeist?
Uh, I'm gonna have to go with Poltergeist, even though The Fog is great. Poltergeist hits some young nerves with me. I got to give it credit for.
All right, fair enough. How about Child's Play or Leprechaun?
Oh, both nerd movies. I like them, but I think I like the Leprechaun because he's just stupider.
Yep. I
Yeah.
always go with Leprechaun too. How about Texas Chainsaw or Christine?
Oh man, that's two of my Chainsaw. I have to. That's my favorite, but Christine's gets very close, very close.
That's a great underrated movie. Underrated
Oh,
movie.
I love it. I love it so much. There's a Christine somewhere back here behind me.
I thought so. I thought I saw it for a second, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Um, how about Carrie or Fright Night?
Fright Night,
The Howling or Return of the Living Dead?
Return of the Living Dead.
All right, now we're going with the bands.
Hmm.
Now, this might be a little easier. I'm not sure. How about White Lion or Winger?
Oh, I would say I'm going to base it off what I listened to and what I liked White Lion's Main Attraction album, and I listened to it quite a bit.
Mm,
Probably side two more than side one if I think about it. Winger didn't dislike them, but I don't
mhm.
think I listened to them the way I listened to White Lion.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Now,
Yeah.
I think, judging by the conversation we just had, I know the answer to this next one. So, Faster Pussycat or Slaughter?
Oh, Faster Pussycat. But I had Slaughter. I definitely had Slaughter. I bought it the day it came out. I was excited for it.
And you went to the Hair Metal Meltdown back in June,
I
too. So,
did. I
yeah.
did. Yes.
How was that, by the way? Did you enjoy it?
It's great. I mean, again, I love to be able to go out and catch shows and to see something like that in a giant place. I was pretty shocked to see people had came out and they were into it, and it was a lot of fun. So, again, that's my genre. So I don't get to see usually anything outside of the whiskey or those places when I'm here. So to see it in a big
Hmm.
big place, that was cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, this next one might be a little difficult for you. Kiss or Alice Cooper?
Oh, Alice wins, but
Alice?
Kiss is definitely standing shoulder to shoulder with. I mean, they're both the bands that I still just constantly compare everything that I do to them. I
Mm,
mean, Kiss, it's the stage show, it's the look, it's the drive, it's the goal of being the best, and then Kiss has got the merchandise too, which is another thing that I'm
oh, yeah.
really into as well. Like I'm pretty proud that I kill it on merchandise with my band. I keep it going. I've got everything you can think of pretty much when it comes to merchandise.
Yeah.
So Kiss is my mentors when it comes to that. So that's why I always say they're pretty much, and they're still to this day they are the two driving bands that are my favorite, that just do no wrong to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And last one Motley Crue or Poison?
Motley Crue, but I love Poison too. Both very big bands in my history. When I'm watching that Nothing But a Good Time documentary the other day, I remember hearing Poison, how they started, and I remember when Open Up and Say Ah, right before it came out,
Mhm.
I had got Poison's address and I wrote Poison, and I didn't even really write anything that crazy. I just went, "Hey, can you please send me some info on your fan club?" And I got this letter back, and it was like and luckily I wasn't gullible to believe it, because it was a printed letter, and it was like, it goes, "Thank you for writing Poison. Your letter was so amazing. We just had to write back." And I was like, "Well, I knew I didn't write anything. That's why I knew it." But then I went, "Okay." But it was a little, it was a piece of paper that had a staple in it. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like an envelope, how they saved on their postage. But the thing was to go hang out with Motley Crue, to hang out at the weekends with on at the skating rink.
Mm.
And I was this little nerdy kid, and there was this one long haired guy that had a Poison shirt on, and I had that letter in my jacket, and I was like, man, I got to become friends with this guy. So I went. I was like, it's a cool Poison shirt, and he's like, yeah, whatever. And I went, yeah, they wrote me a letter, and he went, yeah, right. And I went, oh yeah. And I gave it to this dude, and he opens it up, and he's just like, no way, everybody. And it brings, and I'm like finally the nerd at the skating rink just found I'm just like, they're like, man, he knows Poison. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. I know Poison. That's right. So
Oh, that's
so
great.
so yeah, I got more Poison stories, but it would go on for days. So
Well, I mean, I think if you're up for it, I'd love to have you back on for just those kind of discussions, like the glam
oh
rock
yeah.
bands and all the kind of like album breakdowns for the glam bands and all that stuff. I would, if you're down, you're not too busy,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. That stuff's always fun for me. So
All
it's
right,
easy.
cool. Well, again, I don't want to keep you all day, so I want to start wrapping this up now. And
Yes.
to do so, I want you to talk about your upcoming tour and just plug that. I know it's like UK, Ireland, Germany, Italy, and all that. So,
Yes. Yeah. 4 weeks away, October 24th to November 24th. Starts in the UK. It's a headline run. We got support from a UK band called South of Salem. It's really cool. They toured this last year. They've definitely got a more traditional rock vibe with them as well. So I think our fans that dig what we do be will dig them as well. It's not far off from the same ingredients, and their main support for most of the dates. And then I think I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5 dates, but Hardcore Superstar comes in and does London. And I don't know all the places. Anyway, they do 4 or 5 shows, and then we go over to Europe with them, and then we flip flop, and then we're supporting them in Italy and Switzerland and Germany and stuff like that. So, and that's all Murderdolls set. I'm not playing any
hmm,
Wednesday 13 solo songs. It's just going to be strictly a Murderdolls only set, and that's the last. This will be the last year that I'm solely doing that, where I'm
hmm,
booking tours as that. Not saying I won't do a one-off Murder Doll set here or there. I would love to do that, and that's the plan to do that in the future. But the
hmm,
plan is not to do it constantly. So I've hit all
yeah.
the markets. Once I hit the UK and Germany and everything with that, I've hit all the main markets that we needed to do. Still waiting for Japan,
You
South
heard it
America,
here.
Mexico next year. But so yes, but once next year comes around, new album, I'm already booking a US tour. We'll be announcing that probably not too long from now, and
Okay.
so lots of stuff. I just gotta wait just a little bit longer till can get busy and get this record out. And I'm so excited. People are going to see a tons of promotion on this, from videos to the making of the album in the studio. We got everything. So I'm excited to do this release. The last record, I wasn't ready for that album to come out. I wasn't ready to do interviews, but I had to, and I did it, and I wasn't exactly in the best mindset. And I'm going into
Mm.
this one a lot better, and I'm excited. I'm excited for people to hear. I'm proud of this record. So I'm excited for the world to hear it. Just got to wait a little bit longer.
That's incredible, man. And thank you again for being here. And if you want to plug your social media and your website and all that stuff, feel free.
Official Wednesday13.com takes you to everything. And then I've got my Instagram and Facebook, which is a wasteland of, but if you want to find me, I'm there. But mainly Instagram is where I go. Mr. Motherfucker is the handle. And that's it.
Cool, man. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Awesome, dude. We'll see you next time.